Welcome to the debate for the upcoming general election for the 5th Middlesex State Senate District seat. I'm David Watts Jr. and I'm your moderator this evening. Before the debate, we flipped a coin to determine the order of the candidates. The candidates in the debate this evening are State Senator Jason M. Lewis, Democrat from Winchester, and Monica C. Mederios, Republican from Melrose. An invitation was extended to all the news outlets in the 6 communities in the district to participate on the press panel to pose questions to the candidates. The press panel this evening is reporter Mark Sardella from the Wakefield Daily Item and editor Steve Ryan from the Wakefield Observer. Welcome. There are no opening statements in this evening's debate. In turn, a question will be asked of a candidate by the press panel. That candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. Following that response, the second candidate will have the opportunity to present his or her own 1-minute response to the same question. Now, for as many questions as possible in the time available, while maintaining the ability for all to have a chance to respond, candidates should please try and keep their answers short and to the point. Questions have not been provided in advance. Questions must be relevant to issues important to the district. Questions of a personal nature are not allowed. At the end of the debate, in turn, each candidate will present a 2-minute closing statement. The debate will maintain strict compliance with stated time limits in order to be able to have as many questions as possible from the press panel. The moderator will govern the conduct of the debate at all times. And let's now begin with a first question, Mark Sardella to Jason Lewis.
Thank you. I thought we'd start with an easy one to begin. Are you in favor of ballot question 3, which would repeal the state's casino law, and why or why not?
Okay. Well, thank you first to Wakefield Community Television for hosting our forum tonight, and to our moderator, David Watts, and thank you, Mark, to you and Steve for joining us on the press panel, and also to Monica Mederios, my opponent. I appreciate having this opportunity to share our views with the voters at home. So to your question, ballot question number 3 is obviously a very important question that all of us will have to make a decision on November 4th, and I will be voting no on question 3. When I was serving in the House of Representatives as the state representative for Stoneham and Winchester before I had the honor of being elected as the state senator, I actually had a chance to debate and vote on the original legislation authorizing up to 3 casinos in the state. And it was a very difficult decision for me, and one that I thought about long and hard, and I did a lot of research on it. And in the end, I did support the legislation because I thought it will bring a significant number of construction jobs and permanent jobs to Massachusetts, as well as revenue that our state will use to help fund local aid and education. And the reality is today, many Massachusetts residents are going to Connecticut, to Rhode Island, and in the future probably to New Hampshire to gamble. So they're taking their money out of the state right now and not keeping it here. So I don't think at this point we should repeal the law. And in fact, given that the Gaming Commission has several licenses, it would really throw the whole process into chaos. So I understand the concerns folks have about casinos. I think the law was carefully crafted to address, some of the social ills like gambling addiction, and having communities, agree on the siting of casinos and have mitigation payments. So for those reasons, I'll be voting no.
Monica.
Thank you. And again, I would also like to thank WCAT, moderator, our panelists. Thank you very much. And of course, my opponent. And most of all, the people at home who are taking the time to watch and participate and educate themselves in this discussion. In terms of the question, the simple answer is I have thought a lot about this question, and I have decided that I will be personally voting yes in favor to repeal the casinos. Although if I'm elected, and should this pass and public sentiment, should this fail and the law stay in place, I would uphold the will of the people. I've thought long and hard about it, and I don't believe that the benefits of a casino outweigh the ills. And there's been a lot of talk about the number of jobs that might come, but there's also a lot of costs and a lot of social costs that come along with it. And I think we can do better for our state. I'm going to personally vote no. Yes, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Steve, for Monica.
My question is, do you feel the current levels of education funding in the district's communities are fair, knowing that each community has a different funding level? If not, how would you like to see it changed?
Thank you very much, Steve. I do appreciate that. I have personally, I'm on the Board of Aldermen in the city of Melrose currently, and previously before that I've been on committee. So I've been pretty involved at the local level and including in our schools, and I've seen how this funding formula of the Chapter 70 funding formula, how it affects our communities. And it really, I don't think that it is fair. I know that the Education Reform Bill of 1993 was actually one of the reasons why I got involved in politics and in government and stepped up. I interned at the State House back when I was in high school under then Senator Richard Tissett, and at the time this was at the forefront. And I think that that law was a great law, and it changed the shape of education in this state. But as things go on, the law itself did require that that the formula would be looked at every 2 years, and that hasn't happened. And I think there are things that we can do about it. Certainly, we need to have the commission meet, which I'm very pleased. Senator Tarr, the Republican minority leader, had been the lead sponsor of a bill in the Senate that reinstates the Chapter 70 Budget Review Commission, and I'm happy to see that moving forward. That's just a piece of the pie. I do think some of the reforms that happened in 2007, which added income into the equation, don't really adequately address the fact that the only means community to raise revenue is through the property tax. So I think we need to look more closely at what the capabilities are in terms of property tax revenue. So I would probably adjust the formula that way, but this is going to take some time. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason?
So I don't think there's anything that's more important to the well-being of our communities than the strength of our public schools. It really is the backbone of our communities, and it really was what got me to run for public office in the first place in 2008. Before that, I had been working in the private sector in the high-tech industry for about 15 years. But when my daughter, who's now a sophomore in high school, it's hard to believe, but when she was a kindergartner, at that time there had been cuts back in 2002, 2003 in school funding from the state, and there had been layoffs of teachers and school librarians. And in my daughter's elementary school, they were looking for parents to come and volunteer at the libraries. And I said, something's wrong here. And actually that led me down a path which serving in local government and ultimately running for the state legislature, because this issue is so important to me. And I've worked very hard on it for the 5.5 years now that I've been in the legislature, to maximize Chapter 70 funding for all of our communities every year, to work to get every community to its target level, like Wakefield and Stoneham, and most recently to pass, actually I mentioned Senator Tarr, but in fact this was my legislation that I had sponsored for several years to recreate the Foundation Budget Review Commission, which is now tasked with updating the Chapter 70 formula, and that process is just kicking off now. So I'm very hopeful that that will lead to an improvement both in the adequacy of our school funding as well as the equity across communities.
Mark, a question for Jason, please.
Okay, a somewhat related question. In what way advocate for increases in local aid?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly been a priority of mine during the time in office. The two main sources of funding from the state government to our cities and towns is Chapter 70, which is for schools, which we just talked about, and then unrestricted local aid, which is critically important for police departments, fire, supporting our senior centers, our public libraries, and other important service. It's something that is a priority for me and has been in the budget. It was very tough during the Great Recession in the years immediately thereafter, because state revenues went off a cliff. And so most areas of the state budget basically faced cuts. But as the economy has come back, and we've been leading the country, in fact, in terms of our economic growth, our unemployment rate is now down to 5.6%, one of the best in the country. We have seen state revenues bounce back, been able to start to restore that local aid. So I think that's critically important that we continue to do everything we can to invest, in our communities.
Monica.
Thank you. This has been actually really a tenet of my campaign. Like I said, I've been very involved at the local level in our cities and towns, in our state government, in our city government, and we just, one thing that we've seen state spending, but we've seen local aid actually decrease as a percentage of the state budget. And unfortunately, I was disappointed. People may know that we both ran against each other in April 1st in a special election. And I was very disappointed that the day after the election on April 2nd, my opponent voted in a strictly party line to shut down completely all further debate over local aid in the state budget. And I don't, anything should be off the table when it comes to local aid. Those are our tax dollars that come back to pay for our education, to pay for our schools, our roads, and it is the most important thing. We are seeing, and I've seen proposals, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, is there a chance to respond or to rebuttal?
No, we have dropped the rebuttals because we're a one-hour format to get more questions in.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
All right.
Okay. Steve, for Monica, please.
Monica, some people have expressed concern that if you were elected, that you would remain on the Board of Aldermen in Melrose. Is that something that you do plan to do? And if so, how would you balance both responsibilities?
Well, certainly if I were elected, the term would start in January. There would be a one-year overlap. I've thought about this a lot. I made a commitment to the voters last fall to serve this term out. I believe I would stay on the Board of Aldermen. Board of Aldermen meets at night, so for all the years that I've been on so far, I've had a full-time job and worked at the Board of Aldermen, and also served on the Board of Aldermen. I do think that brings a benefit to the perspective that I would bring to the State House. So often I think there's a slew of competing interests up at the State House from many different lobbyists and special interest groups and just many different interests. And I think that, having that local perspective and seeing that back and forth, different legislators have done this in the past. I believe Paul Casey stayed on the Board of Selectmen, I could be wrong, in Winchester while he was a state representative. And you have seen people do this. I would certainly fill out my term, and then I would review that next year.
Thank you. Jason?
Well, obviously, this is a decision that my opponent will make, and I hope she will not have to make that decision, of course. But Paul Casey, who was predecessor in the House, never served on the Board of Selectmen, and he was dedicated as a full-time state representative, and I was proud to serve also as a full-time state representative and now as a full-time state senator. And I put more than full-time hours into this job. I barely see my family most evenings and even many weekends because it really is a full-time job serving a district, particularly the size of the Senate district. That's obviously would be my opponent's decision. But I think that people within the district, particularly outside of Melrose, who might have some concerns about having a state senator who also is doing double duty on a city council.
Thank you. Mark?
Jason, are you in favor of ballot question 1, which would repeal the 2013 law that automatically increases gas taxes according to inflation? Why or why not?
We'll be voting no on question 1. And I'm very pleased to have the opportunity actually to speak about it, because I think this is a very critical issue for the voters to weigh in on in November. And I hope that this question will in fact be defeated. And I suspect this will be a difference between myself and my opponent on this question. Let me say first that being able to have a safe, reliable transportation system, major engine for creating jobs in our state and for driving our state's economy. It's important to note that all gas tax revenues, so every penny that each of us pays at the pump, goes exclusively to fund transportation needs. So that's for roads, bridges, and for public transportation, which is very important, obviously, to our region. According to the Federal Highway Administration, 53% of bridges in our state are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. The top 10 structurally deficient bridges carry more than 1 million cars and trucks each day. More than 1 million cars and trucks each day on structurally deficient bridges. Potholes and bad roads, and we all are familiar with those, cost drivers $2.3 billion a year in car repairs. So we're all paying out of our pockets already for repairs because of bad roads. If question 1 were to pass, it would take $1 billion over the next decade out of our transportation funding system. So poof, $1 billion would no longer be available to maintain roads, to repair bridges, and for public transportation. So I think it's very important that we vote no, that we maintain the gas tax, and that it is linked to inflation, which is the case in 15 other states. There's nothing unusual what we're doing here, and that way at least we make sure it maintains its value and we can have a safe, reliable transportation system.
Monica.
Thank you. I will be voting yes on question 1 to repeal the automatic increase in the gas tax. And that's really where, I know there's a lot of, I think, I don't want to confuse the issue, but the real heart of the issue of this ballot question is to repeal the provision of the law that was passed by the state legislature, including my opponent, which would link any future gas tax increases to the consumer price index and automatically have an increase. And I'm opposed to that because I think that takes away the legislators' accountability. I think that legislators are there to be representative of the people and accountable to the people and should have to answer for these votes. And for something to go up automatically in perpetuity is not wise. And certainly the cost of gas affects everybody, not just in what your tank, but also in your goods and services and groceries, et cetera. So thank you.
Thank you. Steve, question for Monica, please.
Monica, how do you view your role as a prospective state senator in confronting the opioid crisis in the district's communities in light of the regional efforts through the Massachusetts Overdose Prevention Collaborative Grant?
So this has been something that's been on the forefront of my mind since I was first elected into office. I'm so saddened that we've gotten to this level of overdose deaths in this state and in this country. But at the same time, I'm pleased that this is something that the public and the government legislators all throughout the state are actually paying attention to. And because for so long, and when I first got involved and ran for the school committee, it was really something that I think many communities, we had overdose deaths, and I think many communities wanted to sweep these under the rug because it's unpleasant, and it showed a flaw in our society. Now I feel that we are dealing with it head on, and I'm proud of the things we've done in Melrose. I think I would like to continue to see this be a focus at the state level as well, and certainly, we need to look at all avenues that are available to us, including to commuter. They're dealing directly with police and fire and schools, and the kinds of education and prevention methods that we can put in place at the local level. So the grants are certainly very important.
Thank you. Jason?
Some of the most heartbreaking conversations that I've had with constituents are parents with children who have substance abuse problems. And it really has reached a crisis proportion with opioids, prescription drug overdoses, and heroin and other substances. I pushed very hard to try form a substance abuse coalition in the town of Stoneham, which didn't have one until recently. and helped to work with the schools and the police department and the public health department and parents to really put that together, because I've seen how effective having local coalitions can be in really trying to increase education, awareness, and prevention. I've also pushed hard for funding in the state budget for substance abuse prevention and treatment, and that's an area we've really focused on. And recently, this year, in fact, we passed legislation which is going to make it much easier for families to get private insurance coverage for substance abuse prevention and treatment services. Unfortunately, today, many families find that very difficult, so that will be helpful. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that I'm actually working with the Mystic Valley Public Health Coalition and the Reading Substance Abuse Coalition to co-sponsor a regional forum on strategies for dealing with opioid abuse, and that's actually going to be at Reading High School later in October, and we'll get information out about that, but I think that will be a great opportunity to come together as a region and discuss solutions.
Mark, question for Jason, please.
What steps do you think should be taken at the level to address the region's high energy costs?
Yes. In fact, it's interesting asking that question, because I just got notification from, I think it was from National Grid, about a very significant rate increase, that they're going to be rolling out this winter. And what they claim that they're not, they're not causing it directly, because they're not the generator of power. They're the distributor, and that is caused by a lack of distribution capacity, for, in this case, for natural gas supplies. So I do think that, and I've had the same conversations with some of the local utilities, right here in Wakefield and in Reading. We do have to look for ways to increase our capacity particularly for delivering natural gas. We all know that there's been an expansion of natural gas around the country through new sources and new technology, and that's been helping to drive the price down. But if we can't get the natural gas, to customers, to homes and businesses in Massachusetts, obviously we don't benefit from that. So I think that's something we do have to look at, our capacity for delivering natural gas. And then, of course, we have to continue to grow our efforts to invest in alternative and renewable energies. We've done a great job, actually, in Massachusetts over the last decade in increasing our solar capacity, increasing also our wind capacity. I think we're second to California now. And we need to keep driving that forward, because the more we expand solar and wind, the more we will bring down, over time, energy prices in terms of electricity. And our, businesses and families will benefit from that. So it's there's no easy answer, but I think it's a multi-pronged strategy.
Thank you. Monica?
Thank you. No, there is no easy answer on this. It's something that, we're faced with factors well beyond our control on the global level that affect some of the energy cost. But some of the things that we can do, and that I could do as a state legislator, is to help increase education and around conservation issues, so that the less we're using, this at least helps a little bit. And of course, increase our solar and alternative energy use, make sure that people know of the resources that are available to them, for instance, Mass Save and solar energy. And you have to look at the incidentals that even the big energy companies face, like an increase in the gas tax or the sales tax, and all these things increase healthcare costs, what we can do on those levels that can help drive the cost of all businesses, including our energy providers, down.
Thank you. This is Steve. A question for Monica, please.
Monica, with more time in this election, what have you been doing to reach out to constituents outside of Melrose? And what have you been doing to try to sway registered independents? Well,
thanks, Steve. I have just been out as much as humanly possible around the district. I definitely don't see even my family very much or have very much free time, but I am enjoying every minute of it. I'm going out, knocking on doors throughout all the communities in the district. I've been to as many public events as I can possibly attend. I was looking for ways to educate myself about what's going on in different, forums that might be out there. and of course go out and meet people. You know, and of course we try to send things to the local media, as I've been sending many things to you. And, you know, hope we get our word out, and we get to meet as many people as possible, but nothing like going door to door.
Jason.
Well, I applaud my opponent. Certainly, we see each other at many events all over the district, and I'm also working very hard to visit, you know, every neighborhood all across this great, the 5th Middlesex district. And I've also been working very closely with our mayors and our town administrators and our boards of selectmen and school committees on prioritizing the needs for our communities. And I'm pleased that we've already, you know, been able to have a number of significant accomplishments for our district. Working with my colleagues in the House of Representatives in the district to secure $15 million in state funding for transportation projects in our district in a bond bill. We were also able to secure $3.5 million in an environmental bond bill that's for flood mitigation projects. So we know how important that is in many of our communities. We also, another $2 million for community beautification projects at Pine Banks Park, Fellsmere Pond, and also community gardens in the city of Malden. So I've been working hard, you know, with in the legislative delegation and with our local officials to work to, you know, really look at every possible way to invest in our communities.
Thank you. We're going to switch it up a little bit with the press panel now. Steve, a question for Jason, please.
Okay. Jason, you ran a relatively aggressive campaign against Monica last time, but you seem to be more tempered this time around. Is there a reason behind that?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. You know, I think approach to any campaign that I've run has been to talk about you know, what I'm all about, what my values are, what my beliefs are, and of course what I hope to accomplish you know, once in office. And I think well, hopefully what the voters have seen who helped to elect me on April 1st in the special election to succeed Catherine Clark is that I've delivered, you know, on what I said I would deliver on. You know, I've been very active, hands-on state senator district. I mentioned a few moments ago some of our successes in terms of the funding for transportation projects, for environmental projects. Also, we've had increases in our state budget we talked about Chapter 70 funding, for local aid, for substance abuse and prevention needs, for transportation and other needs. And that's, you know, that's what I was focused on when I first ran. That's what I'm focused on now, is what have I actually been able to deliver for the district. I mean, that's what this is all about, and exactly what I would hope to continue to do, you know, if I'm fortunate enough to continue to serve as the district's state senator. And I would add that I think what I am very proud of as a validation for the work that I've been doing. You know, I've earned the support in my reelection campaign of the majority of our elected local officials, including the mayor of Melrose, Mayor Dolan, as well as the majority of the board of aldermen in Melrose, you know, all of whom are colleagues of my opponent and obviously know her work very well, and they know my work. And I'm proud to have earned their support because they've seen that I've actually been able to, you know, deliver results day in and day out for our communities.
Thank you. Monica?
Thank you. I believe the question was about Mr. Lewis's treatment of me in the past campaign. And the question is because, you know, just the day actually before the primary in the last campaign, his campaign sent out, you know, a press release. The day of the primary, he sent out a press release with some attacks and allegations towards me. And throughout the campaign, you know, I said very much that I hoped that the voters would reject those tactics. You'll see, you know, yes, my opponent has a litany of endorsements, many of whom are Democratic political activists. And I think that's why people got so excited about my campaign, came so close in such a short time despite being so overspent, that I won here in Wakefield, in Melrose, and in Reading, and got 47% of the vote despite all of that. So I'm really pleased that people looked beyond that, and I hope that they will look again at me as a person and at what I bring to the table in this coming election. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, question for Monica, please.
Do you believe that there is a significant problem with abuse of Department of Transitional Assistance programs such as EBT? And what would you do to ensure that those programs are not abused?
You know, there certainly is some abuse, Mark, in the system, and it's some of the most offensive abuse, because the people, you know, there are people who are working hard, and it's their hard-earned tax dollars that are going towards these programs. But what's more offensive is that there are people that really desperately need many of these services, and when people abuse the system, they're taking away from both groups, especially it the most. You know, we've certainly found that there have been people who have been using these EBT cards, you know, all throughout the country, not necessarily in Massachusetts. We've found that there's been, you know, large balances that have been built up over time. There's been some movement in legislation to review the balance buildup a little bit more quickly. I think that went part of the problem, but we need to do that more quickly. You know, maybe after 90 days to see if balances haven't been touched, so we know that something's wrong. We know that about 42,000 pieces of mail became back undelivered for those who are recipients of our EBT benefits. So when we have questions, are they actually living, you know, here? Do they still need the assistance? Are they residents of Massachusetts? So certainly we need to look at all of those kinds of things and delve into this. You know, self-declaration, this right now is self-declaration. You need to have some kind. I worked in mortgages and real estate financing, and you know, we have to identify and we have to back up and confirm everybody's, you know, income, employment, who they are, and we need to be able to do that at the state level when we give out benefits as well, not just, you know, give somebody a Social Security number or, you know, have somebody turn in a Social Security number and not verify that they are who they are. We need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
I think we need to look regularly at all of our programs, you know, across our state government for ways to do them more efficiently, for ways to be smarter, for example, using technology. And that's something I've, you know, coming out of the private sector. I worked in the high-tech industry, as I mentioned, for 15 years. And so there's always ways we should be looking at to do things better. I do think it's unfortunate that the issue of EBT, or electronic benefit transfer cards, which is really a euphemism for welfare, has been used as a political football by some people running for office. And the reality is that the amount in our state budget that we spend on welfare is less than 2% of the state budget. And the amount, and this is based on audits that have been done of the program, the amount that's actually truly fraud is a few percent of that total amount. So yes, there have been some problems, and I have supported efforts to correct those. For example, making changes to the kinds of purchases that an individual can make using an EBT card, for example, not alcohol or tobacco or things like that, and steps to increase the penalties for fraud, and other steps to really cut down on that. So I think we have taken it very seriously, but the reality is that this is not, the problem is not the size that some people would, I think, have us believe it is.
Steve, a question for Jason, please.
Jason, in Stoneham, the community is concerned about a proposed 40B project on what is currently Weiss Farm, feeling that it would have a heavy impact on the town and its neighbor, Melrose. Mm-hmm. How would you view your role as a state senator in helping Stoneham get the best possible outcome given the limitations of affordable housing mandates, and speaking about 40B mandates in general?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've been, as the state representative for Stoneham before, and now as the state senator for Stoneham and also for Melrose, I've been very active and very vocal in expressing my serious concerns about the proposed development at the Weiss Farm property on Franklin Street. I'm certainly not opposed to reasonable development, particularly if it includes affordable housing. We do need more affordable housing in our area for young families, for seniors, so that they can stay in the community, and other folks. But what's proposed for the Weiss Farm is far too large. It's close to 200 units. I think it's far too large and out of character, you know, for that residential community. I'm very concerned about the impact it could have on flooding. I'm very concerned about the impact it could have on traffic and public safety. So I've been not been shy at all in expressing those concerns, and I have stood with the residents and local officials in speaking out against that. And I think that is the role when you're an elected representative. It is your role to be, I believe, to be a leader and not to sit back on tough issues, but to step forward and take a stand and do what you can to try to support, your constituents and the community. So the Chapter 40B is a very complicated process, and it's going to take some time to play out. But I'm hopeful that we will be able to convince the developer to rethink that development proposal, and hopefully in the end to have for that area that is of the right size and scale and character, that makes sense for the neighborhood and for the community, and is still economically viable for the developer.
Thank you. Monica?
Thank you. So this is one of the areas in which I believe Senator Lewis and I are united in our opposition to this project. This project is too big for this area. At Weiss Farm. It's not a good fit for this. There's many concerns, including traffic, flooding, drainage, and public safety. And I've had the opportunity to go to several of the meetings, and one of the benefits of being the state senator is they let you speak. So that was great that he was able to speak, and I was glad that somebody was there to do so. And certainly I would be willing to do so given the opportunity as well. I think we need to look further at it and look at 40B in general, because it's something that it really needs formed. A place like Stoneham shouldn't be in this predicament altogether. We've been very much on the forefront of development in Melrose, and we've done it without having it to be forced on it. But it takes a lot of effort. And once a developer comes in, 40B just gives people the right to go in and completely ignore the local zoning and the wishes of the local neighborhood. And I think that needs to be reformed, and that's something at the state level.
Thank you. Mark, a question for Monica, please.
What's your position on ballot question 2, which would increase the beverage container deposits and expand the coverage, and which I think also includes an indexing element as well, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, it does. My position on this is that I will be voting no on this question. Recycling is very important. I'm very proud of our efforts in Melrose towards recycling. In fact, we actually just at the beginning of this month increased our curbside recycling from biweekly to weekly. When you look at this proposal and this ballot question, what it does is it requires new types of things like the water bottles and juice, etc., to be non-beverages, to collect an additional deposit on that, which would then be indexed. And we've already talked about my opposition to indexing taxes. But in reality, how would this be implemented? It would be tremendous cost on businesses and employers to do this. It would be tremendous hassle to our residents to have to gather all your recyclables that you can now put out at the curb and truck them down in your car, make an extra trip to turn them in at the grocery store just so you can get your deposit back. I don't think for the environment. I don't think that is something that makes people's lives easier. And with all these studies, the easier you make recycling, the more recycling you get. And up to 90% of our community has access to curbside recycling. In Melrose, for instance, we have a 70% participation rate in the curbside recycling. I believe Stoneham just went to weekly recycling, and it's their savings so much that they actually decreased their trash fee as a result. So there are other ways to accomplish the goal of increasing recycling without having to add this onerous factor to it. And in fact, there's been, reality is the deposits go into the state and they don't necessarily come back out. So it's another tax. Thank you.
Jason?
Well, we're all familiar with, water bottles like this and, juice bottles and iced tea and all these different beverage containers that are now littering our parks, playgrounds, beaches, just on the roadside. And that is it is an eyesore. It's also a cost to our cities and towns, our DPW departments that have to go out and pick up that litter. And the reality is that the bottle bill was put in place in the early 1980s with the deposit system. Has been the most successful recycling program that we've ever had. More than 80% of the containers that have a deposit are in fact recycled, whereas the containers that didn't exist in the 1980s, all these new ones that don't have a deposit, the recycling rate is actually less than 30%. So that's why this is important and why I'll be voting yes, because it will increase the recycling rate on these other containers. We know that's what we've seen with deposits, and it will reduce a litter. And the last point is that this complements curbside recycling. This isn't about doing away with curbside. I'm all for expanding curbside recycling as well. This complements it because it takes these containers in places where they're not in your home, when you're out and about, and it will get those out, get the litter off our, off of our streets and parks and beaches.
Thank you. Steve, a question for Jason, please.
Jason, communities in the district have been working hard on developing their downtowns. Mm-hmm. What do you view as the key ingredient in successfully developing a downtown, and how would you, as a state senator, facilitate these developments?
Mm-hmm. So this is definitely one of the top priorities for actually every one of the communities that I represent in the state senate district, is how to revitalize the downtown or the city center, how to encourage more business growth, expand the tax base as well. So I've been very involved in efforts in all the communities that I have represented. Looking for ways to support those efforts. So, for example, in successful grants that, for example, Winchester has secured around smart growth planning, that's helping to plan for a revitalized downtown. I also introduced legislation last year that would create a very innovative called an Active Streets Certification Program. And it's modeled after the Green Communities Act, which a number of our communities are green communities. And what this would do is it would provide additional Chapter 90 transportation funds to communities that become certified as active streets communities. And what that would mean is that it would give them additional funds to support other modes of transportation. So one of the keys to our city centers and downtowns is thinking about how to not just move cars, also to make it safe for pedestrians, so more people are comfortable, walking, shopping, dining. Also for bicycles where appropriate, bike lanes, and tying into public transportation, because that's very important to our region as well. So some of our communities, like on Franklin Street in Melrose, is a great example of a project underway already to expand sidewalks, make streetscape improvements, tie it into the commuter rail station. That's going to encourage more businesses to locate there and restaurants. So I think that this that I offered, which was passed by the House and the Senate and signed by the governor and now is getting implemented, I think is a great example of a concrete strategy to support local efforts to invest in our downtowns and city centers.
Thank you. Monica?
Thank you. This is an area that I've been very involved with. In fact, I was recently asked to testify before the Legislative Advisory Committee up at the State House, the Local Government Committee up at the State House on Development. We've done, I think, a great job in Melrose. We've taken proactive steps to change our zoning and to do different things to encourage development, including the project on Franklin Street and many others. I think part of that success is, and I've been involved at many different community meetings throughout the district, from the MAPC out in Reading and Malden and in Melrose, and this has been going on, before my time as a candidate for this office even. And I think one of the things that makes a difference as I see different communities is having a planner. That's very much, it's a local job and it's a local focus, but I could bring my expertise, and I think it's very important, again, that we have enough local aid coming back to our communities, and I would suggest that we look at revenue sharing as we get new revenue coming into the state, that we look at making sure that we're earmarking a percentage of that to come back to our cities and towns so that they can make those decisions and hire those people in those staff positions that can help take us to the next level and find out what grants are actually available to them so that they're applying and taking advantage. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, a question from Monica, please.
According to a report in the Christian Science Monitor, Colorado is anticipated to take in 60 to 70 million this year in taxes from legal marijuana sales. Are you in favor of legalizing marijuana for recreational use in Massachusetts in order to add another tax base to the state?
No, Mark, I am not in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana. We are still in the process of putting in place the ballot question and getting it in place and actually up and running. It's been about, I don't know, 3 years now or so for medical marijuana. Certainly we would like to see how it goes. But I don't think that legalizing marijuana for recreational use would do anything to benefit our opioid crisis. I mean, certainly this is something that, and we're seeing many studies now about youth use of marijuana and how it's actually affecting people as they grow up, and you know, real cognitive changes in their brains as a result of this. This is not something that I would support. I don't believe that our law enforcement thinks this is a good idea, and no, I would not support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
So we're in agreement here, and I would also not support the legalization of marijuana. We've already, based on a previous ballot referendum, decriminalized marijuana, and we've seen some problems from that. From my conversations with our police chiefs and others, I think we are seeing some increase in use among our students, and also now with the most recent ballot question legalizing medical marijuana. I think it is sending a message to our young people that marijuana is completely safe, and they can use it. And as Monica said, there is growing body of research that shows, particularly for the teenage brain, the negative impact that marijuana does have over time on cognitive development. So I don't think that's the right best for our state to take.
Thank you. Steve, a question for Jason, please.
Jason, how would you assess your performance so far as a state senator? What are some things you're proud of, and what are some things you would like to work on more, or feel that you didn't do enough so far?
Well, I've really been hard at work on behalf of the entire district. I'm very pleased, actually, that we've already been able to have some significant results for the district. First of all, in the state budget, significant increases in Chapter 70 funding and local aid, as well as funding for our seniors and senior services, veteran services, also funding for substance abuse prevention and treatment. So those were all things that we did in this year's FY15 state budget, which are critical to our communities, and I championed. I also mentioned the success that I've had working with our state representatives in the district in securing approximately $15 million for transportation improvements. Those are local projects like fixing unsafe intersections, streetscape improvements, and so on. Also, I have been successful in securing funds in an environmental bond bill, both for flood mitigation as well as for community beautification projects, like I mentioned, Pine Banks Park, and some work we hope to do at Fellsmere Pond. My legislation that I sponsored to create the Active Streetscation program, which we talked about earlier, and would help our communities continue to revitalize their downtowns and city centers by providing them a new source of Chapter 90 funding, was passed by the House and the Senate and signed into law by the governor, which was a major feat. And then in the area of school funding, we talked about that earlier, and the importance of adequate Chapter 70 money. And as I said, the thing I've championed for years now to update the formula, we did create in the fiscal year 15 state budget a foundation budget review commission. And that's a major step forward toward ensuring adequate and equitable funding. So I'm proud of the record so far in just 6 months in what we've been able to do, and I know we can do a lot more and get even more results for our communities and our families, if I have the opportunity to continue to serve as the state senator.
Thank you. Monica?
Thank you. I think I explained that I was very disappointed that the day after our election that my opponent voted to shut down all discussion completely along party lines on local aid, which is certainly my priority. That has been certainly something that's disappointed me and that's driven me into this race a second time. You know, in addition, I mean, there's lots of things that we can talk about, but, you know, we look at, for instance, again, my priorities in bringing money back to our cities and towns. We can look at our lottery, and although I am pleased that all of the proceeds of the lottery are supposed to come back to our communities, less the prizes and administrative costs. And there's lots of money that's being diverted to the general fund and not being sent back to the cities and towns. And although my opponent did vote to send back $25 million, there's another $50 million need and deserve to come back to our communities. And, you know, that's just one of the things. Again, my opponent's been there. He's had 5.5 years in the state legislature. He's voted to increase the sales tax by by 25% to 6.25%, and it's just indexed the gas tax to inflation. It's a definitely different set of priorities and a different set of answers to solve our problems, and I disagree. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, this is going to be the last question to Monica, please.
In what ways do you think that Beacon Hill can be more apparent?
Well, you know, part of that is, again, actually taking votes on things and not indexing things to inflation is a great first step. Again, I serve in local government. Every local government board has to be subject to the open meeting law. I would suggest, and I would file legislation to make the state legislature have to also file, I can't think of the word, by the open meeting law. And, you know, I think that would be very important. Certainly publishing votes online, committee votes, you know, again, and that's the difference. He had an opportunity to vote to do that and voted against doing that. I believe that, you know, we deserve to you know, give our case, state our case, and say this is why we did it, and if people don't like it, they deserve to be able to tell us and know that. That's some of the things that we can do to make more accountable. You know, I love the open checkbook, and I think we need to, you know, do more of that and increase that. Certainly we have to increase the use of technology at every turn, but certainly, you know, being accountable is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you, and since it's the last opportunity, I just want to address a misrepresentation that my opponent has actually brought up twice now in this debate in terms of questioning my commitment to local aid. And the reason that the legislature voted not to debate further local aid, this was, I guess, back in April, was because, in fact, the Democrats and Republicans in both houses had reached an agreement back in March on what levels of local aid and Chapter 70 would be in the state budget. And the reason we do that is because municipal leaders find it enormously helpful, as my opponent knows, because she serves on the Board of Aldermen, to have that information early, so that it helps our city and towns to build their budgets. So that's to help them, that the state government actually tries to make a decision earlier, the state legislature, I should say, on the levels of funding. So we had already made that agreement. The House and the Senate had signed off already on that, and that's why it didn't make sense to debate it further, and I think my opponent knows that. But the short answer on transparency is that I fully agree, and that I would support any measures, and have supported, to increase transparency, like the open checkbook that's successful in providing spending information. I would be open to expanding the open meeting law for the legislature and other initiatives as well, because I think letting the voters see and the residents see everything that our government is up to builds understanding and builds trust.
Okay. Thank you for your questions from the press panel. We'll go to closing statements. Jason?
Well, thank you very much again to Wakefield Community Access Television, our moderator, press panel, my opponent, and of course our viewers at home for taking the time to learn more about what's at stake in this race. You know, I never planned on serving in state government. I worked in the private sector for 15 years. I helped to build 2 successful software companies. But my wife, Susan, and I have always been very active in our community. And as I mentioned in the story I told earlier, when my eldest daughter, started kindergarten, I became concerned that the state was not doing enough to support our public schools and our communities. And that led me down a path into the state legislature in 2008. I had the privilege of representing Stoneham and Winchester for 5 years in the House, and then earlier this year I was honored to be elected to succeed Catherine Clark as the state senator for the 5th Middlesex District. And since then I have visited virtually every neighborhood in the communities of Malden, Melrose, Reading, Wakefield, and Winchester, and I've been working closely with our local officials and community leaders to address the concerns of our communities. And I'm proud of the progress we've already made in just the 6 months that I've been your state senator. Just a few examples I'd mention: increased funding in the state budget for education, for local aid, for services for our seniors and our veterans, and mental health and substance abuse. Governor Patrick signed into law the bill that I sponsored to establish a Chapter 7 Foundation Budget Review Commission. I've worked with my colleagues in the House, and together we secured $15 million of state funding for local transportation projects and over $5 million for flood mitigation and community beautification. And then also, my legislation to help our communities combat the threat of West Nile virus was passed by both the House and the Senate. With your support, I know that I can continue to deliver results like this for our communities and to quality of life for our families. I ask for your vote on November 4th. Thank you very much.
Monica.
Thank you. I do want to thank you, Mr. Watts, for moderating our press panel, my opponent, and the staff, and everyone here at WCAT, and of course everyone at home. Again, my name is Monica Mederios. I'm a candidate here for the state senator position in Malden, Melrose, Stoneham, Reading, Wakefield, and precincts 1, 2, 3, and 8 in Winchester. I am honored to just even be a candidate in this race. I've been very involved in my local government as a member of the Board of Aldermen in my 4th term there, and previously on the school committee. I've been involved. I think I bring a unique, well-rounded balance of experience. With that local level of experience, I'm on the Mass Municipal Association Board of Directors, so involved at the state level and work with many other municipal leaders on issues that affect us, as well as my experience in the private sector. I'm here because I care about the community that I live in. I care about the people in all of these towns. And I believe that I'm the best candidate here to bring a perspective that will help keep our economy going and in check, keep taxes down, and keep us growing as a community. And so I'm here, and I would love to have your vote on November 4th. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit my website, www.votemonica.com. Thank you very much again.
Thank you to the candidates for your participation in the debate this evening. I want to thank the press panel, Mark Sardella and Steve Ryan. Thank you very much for your insightful questions. And I especially want to thank the voters for tuning in to listen to each candidate's views on the issues this evening. It is your vote on Tuesday, November 4th, that will determine what kind of state government we have going forward. Come out, urge your friends to do the same. Democracy requires the participation of all of us. Thank you. Good night.